answer is yes. You can create an industry, attract an industry with the incentivizing of a particular sector.
Absolutely, there's no doubt in my mind. If you had told me 3 years ago that I'd be sitting in New Orleans, Louisiana, buying software companies outside the state and moving them here, I would have literally laughed in your face.
I believe without these state incentives, projects would not move from dream to reality.
Based on our experience, companies do look at these incentives before they make a business decision to come into a jurisdiction.
We determined on the film side that for every dollar in tax credits granted to a producer in the state, there's about $6.42 that goes through the economy.
If you look at a report that we commissioned several years ago, it showed that for every dollar that the state of Louisiana invests in state historic tax credits, they get over $3 back. If you look at the National Trust believes that that's over $5.
Payroll is your by far, single biggest cost. And if you can get those kinds of incentives, and there are others, that's probably the most aggressive one. For software development in the state of Louisiana, you get a 35% cash rebate from the state.
When you look at the recovery of New Orleans, state incentives coupled with federal incentives were the difference between this community recovering and not recovering.
Well, the transparency of the exchange itself between the buyer and seller is critical to the state, because the state, as I said earlier, the state wants to really make sure that the maximum amount of dollars goes to the applicant.
I think there's two issues that I would suggest need to be cleaned up by the state. The first is communications between the various administrative agencies could be substantially improved. That is a fix that should happen both legislatively and administratively. The second, in terms of the market itself, there is a lack of transparency in the creation of the market, who owns the credits and who wants the credits.
The flaw, as many of us see it, is the ability to be transparent so that the buyers and the sellers can maximize value.
Transparency will only demonstrate that both positions are getting the best deal that they can possibly get.
Transparency is critical for many reasons. One, to efficiently monetize the credit. Number two, to keep the credit in the state active and strong. And thirdly, you just don't want corruption entering any system.
It greatly diminishes the value of a tax credit if it's not transferable and monetizable. If you're limiting it to just the people who generate it and they either use it or lose it, maybe that makes sense, but I can assure you as an entrepreneur and a capitalist, that is a far less attractive environment for us.
Without the ability to monetize them, then you can't bridge finance them, and then it doesn't serve as equity at the time that it's needed, which as any developer knows, that equity is first money in.
When it wasn't transferable, when somebody could not monetize it, then those companies who don't have a tax liability either within or without the state, clearly it was not an incentive for them to produce here.
It would put us at a terrible competitive disposition.
I would suggest to you that 90 to 95% of the production would go away.
We would cease to see the recovery of our community.
The most important thing is to have these incentives out there for a significant enough period of time so that the state can build infrastructure.
I think for our industry, it would be catastrophic. It would just evaporate.
Yes, the OIX is going to provide a valuable tool for the buyers, for the sellers, for the industry, and for the state.
It's the missing link in the marketplace.
It would be hugely advantageous to us to know what others are getting, so we can then interpret whether what we have either negotiated or expect is realistic or not.
Something like the OIX is critical to the continued development of that marketplace. And it's invaluable to entrepreneurs and capitalists like myself to be able to get that liquidity when I need it at a fair price.